Namaskar, good morning everyone, welcome. Welcome to the Editorial Edge. New week begins and so do we. Alright, this is BhuvanAJha and you are with StudyIQ IAS English as we begin what indeed is a very informative session that we have. 1 hour of intense looking at analysis and topical analysis at that. That is what we do every morning, Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. I am Bhuvan. Once again, I welcome each one of you, those who are watching me live and those who will be connecting with me on this platform later. Okay, so let's begin. I have 3 topics for you. Flooding has been in the news recently, so we are going to take a look at flooding, especially the whole perspective of whether our flood management, our whole perspective should shift from say flood control to flood management, to dealing and living with floods. All right. Good morning, Deepak. Good morning, Arka. How are you? I am very good. Thank you for asking. Absolutely perfect. Thanks for joining this Monday morning. All right. Good morning, Coder. Monica, good morning. No problems, Pratik. You're welcome. Most welcome. Good morning. I know it's been a tough week. It's been raining all around the country. So welcome anyways. Most of you are welcome. All of you are welcome, in fact. So first up, we'll take a look at flooding. Second up, we'll take a look at Namda Art. It has been in the news recently. Just last Friday, we had a program that was attended by Minister of State for Maiti and under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. So Namda Art is something that we'll take a look at. What is the importance of that? And thirdly, we'll take a look at Caste Plateau. Okay. Again in the news, both the articles coming from PIB, the Press Information Bureau. So this is also where another source that I take a look at. This is an overarching topic actually. So you'll find op-eds on this, say not just in today's Hindu, but also in Indian Express, in Down to Earth. Everyone is writing about this because again, this is a topic of interest. Happy morning to you, Sai Krishna. Good morning and welcome. All right. So this is a topic of interest, flood management. So you'll find articles across portals. So it'll help you go ahead and analyze all of them and each of them. Okay. So this is what we are going to do. Let's straight away jump into it. So first let's understand basics. Okay. What exactly is a floodplain? Okay. So for any of you have observed, say during the dry seasons, you will often find that the stream of the river is quite small, right? And there is sand all around, all of this area, right? But the same thing, say in Yamuna, what you find is that is exactly to its edges, to its banks. So the whole area of its flow, its uninterrupted flow is a floodplain. Now the relationship with floods and floodplain is complex. I have oversimplified it here actually, okay? Good morning, Bulbul, you are welcome. Good morning, Madhusudan, welcome, welcome. All of you are welcome. Okay, so I've oversimplified it. In fact, scientists spend their lives understanding the interaction of floods and floodplains. But for the basis of understanding, let's just start from here. Okay, so if this is a floodplain, now you have to realize that floods are essentially the cause, which cause floodplains. Okay, so first you understand the cause-effect scenario here. So this is the cause. Now because rivers change course, okay, you know that rivers change course. So which means that the floodplains get shifted from time to time. So this is the problem now. So in fact, you have had say the human interaction. When you look at the history of humankind with floods and floodplains, you realize that it's a very mixed relationship. Okay. Now we might realize that, okay, because say you and I will go and say live in floodplains, we are exposing ourselves to a lot of threat. Yes, correct, absolutely. But then why is it historically that people live in floodplains? In fact, if you look at say the ancient kingdom of Mesopotamia, Pranam Shivansh, how are you? I'm good, thank you. So if you look at the ancient history of Mesopotamia, the whole word Mesopotamia itself means between 2 rivers, which is the present day Syria, Kuwait and all that. Okay, so between Tigris and Euphrates. So do you realize? So people live in floodplains because of one primary reason. So let's just understand the reason, then we'll understand the geography of it. Okay, so what happens is, so you have a river, all right. Now, river brings a lot of siltation with it, a lot of sediments with it, which eventually starts accumulating over the banks of the river. Now, what happens? The volume of the water that is coming is either going to be increasing when the floods come or at least be on a higher degree. So now the area of its flow is getting lesser and lesser because again, sedimentation is happening on both the banks of the river. Do you realize this? So eventually the river spills. Excuse me. Eventually it spills because the area is less, the volume of water is low or high, which is why it spills. So you have all of these sediments now that flows into the banks. Now please realize these sediments are extremely nutrient rich. In fact, civilizations have been formed on this. Good morning, Riyan. Welcome. Civilizations have been formed on this. All right. So the Yellow River, for example, a very famous river, Yellow River in China. You know where the river gets its name from? It gets its name, the Yellow River is called Yellow River because the color of the river is such that because of the amount of silt and sediments and deposits it carries. Which is why you see it's called, the area around Yellow River is often called as the birthplace of Chinese civilization. So it's not that, it's a mixed relationship with what we share with, say, floods and floodplains. Now why am I telling you this history? Because it's important for us to realize that we will have to live with floods. It's been the history throughout, It's not going to happen suddenly that you will avoid floods. Yes, urban flooding is a different concept. We are talking about flooding in general. We'll have to live with floods, which is why the perspective of operations or policy making needs to shift from flood control to flood management, which is why I'm giving you this history now, okay? So you look at, say, the examples like the Yellow River or even the ancient Mesopotamia. Most of the civilizations have flourished around rivers, even our own Indo-Gangetic plain, Indus River. It's been river-centric always. So when you look at, say, how a river functions, now the basic geography, NCERT level geography, this is just for your revision. So you have a point bar which is formed on the insides, okay? This inside area, the deposition that happens, that is a point bar. A meander scar, essentially an old river channel. This you see here, this narrow strip, this is called the river channel. So when a river shifts, the river changes course. The old river channel that is present, that is called a meander scar, which is always coterminous with an oxbow lake. Okay, give me an example of an oxbow lake, guys, in the chat very quickly. Okay, then you have deposition and erosion that happens on alternate sides. And finally, you have alluvial deposits that eventually spill over, which is where all this agriculture happens, which is why civilizations flourish. Now that we have understood the basics, let's go ahead and jump in the topic then. So this is India's flood prone area map. This is where our topic begins for the day. Alright. So let's look at the red areas first, straight away. The Indo-Gangetic plain, whole of it. The Narmada Tapi area. Okay. You are looking at the Mahanadi area, the Godavari area, obviously the Brahmaputra area. समझ रहे हो आप? Which means this is a pan-India problem. So when we are asked to identify flood-prone river basins, okay, look at this. Flood-prone river basins. You are going to identify Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, Mahanadi, Narmada and Tapi. Please make a note of this from the pre-perspective, guys. Okay. What are the flood-prone river basins in India? Kavartal is correct, Monica. Okay. Oxbow Lake, Kavartal is correct. That is in the state of Bihar, right? So now during monsoons, all of these river basins, what they do is they are carrying 75% of their annual flows. Please understand the whole history now. Now that I have told you, sedimentation, deposition happening on both sides of the river. And suddenly during monsoons, you have 75% of the volume that they are carrying now. Because of, say, increased rainfall, climate change happening, glacier melting, whatever be the reasons. N number of reasons. Okay. So out of the 75%, 20% occurs in shorter, very high flow periods. Okay. So the flood flow, important concept for you to know now. High flow periods plus large volume of water. Which means the rate of flow is not just high, it is also carrying large volumes of water. And with the fact that now you have both the banks, that is again the embankment that you call it. It is getting encroached by the sediments. The river water is going to spill over, which means floods. Now floodplains, straight away when the water spills over, people are living there. Agriculture, industries, all of that is there, affected. Okay. So make a note of the map first, because this is the understanding first. So now the subject, let's look at the statutory provisions. Now that we have looked at the history, we have looked at the geography, let's look at the polity of it a little bit. Who is responsible for flood management in India? Okay. So the subject of flood control. So you have irrigation, but flood control does not figure in any of the three legislative lists. First topic that you have to understand, okay, that this is not explicitly a part of any legislative list, say a concurrent list or state list or union list. All right. But you find is drainage and embankments are two of the measures specifically mentioned in entry 17 of list 2, which is the state list. Okay. So flood control is not mentioned, drainage and embankment is. Now what does it say? Water, that is to say water supplies, irrigation and canals, drainage and embankments, water storage and water power, subject to the provisions of entry 56 of list 1. What does entry 56 say? Interstate river and all those disputes and all of that. Okay? The whole cooperation between interstates, that is to be done by the central government, but drainage and embankment is to do with the states, which means flood control is the essential responsibility of the states. Now, while almost that is a specific concept that I have given you, please understand that a river is a trans-state entity. Most rivers in India flow between multiple states. So again, there is lack of coordination for which the union government needs to play a better role. First things we'll identify. So it may be thus seen that the primary responsibility for flood control lies with the states. Alright, what is the role of the central government? Technical, advisory, catalytic and promotional. It is going to make sure that the collaborative approach is there when it comes to flood management. However, the primary responsibility for say not just preparation but also on ground action and thereafter the post recovery is with the states. Clear hai ye? Because this is the statutory provisions which you need to be aware of. Most students will be aware of the geography, the history also, the Yellow River, Mesopotamia and all of that. Statutory आपको याद रखना है थोड़ा. ठीक है? Let's go forward. So now the flood management mechanisms. So what is in place currently? So state level we have, state level there are departments, okay, water resource, technical advisory department, flood control. Some states also include these two departments, irrigation and PWD also. Good morning Hakim, how are you? Welcome guys. Alright. So some states also include irrigation and public works department in their flood management and their flood control initiatives. Okay. What does the union government do? First, the Central Water Commission. Always in the news recently, you must have seen. So what is that organization first? It is an attached office of the Ministry of Jal Shakti and the whole Department of Water Resources. Okay. Attached office of the Ministry of Jal Shakti. In fact, what you find is, excuse me. Sorry. So what you find is that the Central Water Commission is close to an organization that's 6 decades old. Okay. And one of the organizations that has extensive knowledge in say flood management and flood control, which is why you often find that it is engaging in knowledge sharing also with the other nations that have this problem. Okay. So flood management and flood control ke liye hai ye. Okay. 6+ decades of experience of planning, investigation in water resources development schemes. You also have a water academy that is located in Pune. And then you have these boards. Okay. The government has set up these boards, Brahmaputra board, Farakka Barrage board, all of these that look at say the different tangents within the geographical area. Okay. So you have Brahmaputra board, the Ganga Flood Control Commission, the Farakka Barrage project, plus the NDMA. NDMA for the disaster response, these are for the planning. The planning of water, how it is going to go about, how you are going to create capacity to deal with floods. Navneet, welcome, good morning. Are you able to do this guys? First the statutory yaad rakhenge aap, states ka responsibility hai. Thereafter you are going to take a look at the whole organizations, the institutions that are in place. Once you have identified all of this, history, geography, polity, institutions, now you are able to go ahead and analyze what's at stake. Okay? Let's go forward. So the flood management practices. Now this is where the learning starts. So firstly you have to understand that flood management is not just to do with say averting floods. That is one part. There is also a focus on making sure that you have capacity to deal with floods. Because once again, what you realize is floods are inevitable because a river changes course. Okay. Human beings' interaction with floodplains is also inevitable. You can minimize it, you can reduce it, but you cannot outlaw it. That is how, say, civilizations have formed and developed. Yes, to a large extent you should look to minimize it, because a river should be given the right of the way. If you stand in the river's way, it is your problem. Now, how do the Western countries look at this? Okay, before we start with this. So, how do the Western countries look at this? For example, the same problem when confronted in a Western country, they say, okay, if you are creating an infrastructure in the floodplain, when you are going to get ahead and hit by a flood, don't expect insurance claims. Do you realize? They are disincentivizing building infrastructure in the floodplains. That do it at your own risk. Institutional support shall not be provided to you later. Samajh rahe ho? So now that is again one way that it could be considered. However, what you realize is that a pressure on, say, the river systems and the population pressure is such that if you were to bring this, it would probably not be very effective. You need something that will be effective. The enforcement should be there. So how should you go about it? You just take this policy and now, say, focus it and fit it in the Indian context. How would you do it? So probably like subsidize insurance or settlement claims for those who build outside the floodplains. Incentivize going out of the floodplains. Do you realize? This is how you're going to build it for the Indian context. So let's look at, say, the structural methods now. Okay. The structural methods or the engineering methods that reduce flood flow. What is flood flow? I told you that the rate of flow is high. Okay. And the volume of water is high. Both. All right. So how do you make engineering solutions that will take care of this? Number one, an artificially created reservoir behind a dam across the river so that you can store water, channelize it, and then probably release it at your own convenience. All right. A natural depression suitably improved and regulated if necessary, or by diverting any part of the peak flow to any other river or basin. Right? By constructing a parallel channel. These are the only four that you can do, the 4 steps that are currently being done also, where you either look to divert water, store water, or create an alternate route so as to mitigate or at least lessen the impact of the floods that is coming. Which means this is required to reduce the flood flow. This impact of this is being looked to reduce at. At the same time, there are some that do not reduce flood flow but help reduce flood spillage. Which means the speed will be fast, the volume will be fast, but at the same time you're looking at it does not spill over into the embankments, into the adjoining areas. Okay. How do you do that? You create structures around the banks. You must have seen, if you have been to your say village area or say native place in your villages, you must have seen, say around, at least I have seen in my state, in Bihar I have seen. So a lot of embankments are created, a lot of focus on embankment creation is done, fortifying the banks of the river so that the water does not spill over. Good morning Satish, welcome. Alright, so embankments which artificially raise the effective river bank and the water does not spill over. How do you do it? Normally they'll put sandbags or they'll put some sort of concrete structures. Okay, but then again this is a cost intensive process. Think from the local perspective now, okay, the local district administration point of view. You have created embankments around the rivers. Even then, if they are unsuccessful, what happens? The force of the river is such. Well, if the river can eat into mountains, embankments kya hi hai? They can only minimize or at least lessen the impact. They cannot completely prevent it. Again, a cost intensive process every year that you are having to do. Why again? Because the river siltation is high, flow is high, volume is high and the area is less. Do you realize? Cost intensive hota hai. Channel and drainage improvement works which artificially reduce the flood water levels so as to keep the same confined within the river banks. Okay, that you fortify, say, the base of the river, or you make sure that there are structural methods that you improve the flow of the river. All of this can only control the spillage. Completely you cannot negate it. Okay. So these are the engineering methods, guys. Make a note of these which are being done. Okay. One to control the flood flow and one to control the flood spillage. And then the administrative methods So evacuation that you have to do, make sure that there is timely forecasting that is happening. After the people have been evacuated, relocation, resettlement, okay, timely settlement of claims, because again it's people that you're dealing with, people's property, their cattle, their goats, their cows, their agricultural fields. So settlement claims needs to be fast. Okay. Discouraging creation of valuable assets by the people in the areas. Look at this. This is what the West does. The West example that I told you, that if you create in the floodplains, कल अगर बाढ़ आया तो पैसा मांगने मत आना, insurance नहीं मिलेंगे. That you can't do in India because again we have say a kind of poverty level that is unprecedented, at least in certain areas. So make sure that you have an inclusive process. What you should do is incentivize moving out of the floodplain. Rather than say penalizing people living in the floodplain, our model should be to incentivize moving out of the floodplain. That if you move out of the floodplain, we'll give you this. Eventually look to lessen the stress on the floodplain. Only then will you be able to live with the floods, or else all of this life and property loss will keep on happening. Okay. So this will understand, guys. Okay, floodplain zoning. What is floodplain zoning? It's a very important concept, especially from the pre perspective. ये थोड़े ध्यान रखेंगे आज. Okay, look at this example now. The Bihar example. On many embankment systems like the Kosi embankment and the Pipraghat embankment on Gandak, you must know Bihar has several rivers that are exceptionally flood prone. Okay, they change their course frequently, which is why you will find large areas in Bihar constantly getting flooded. So what happens there? The river attack is so severe that the protection measures required to be taken are large and cannot be covered under the normal maintenance works. Capital intensive process eventually ties the hands of the local administration in dealing with it. Okay. So in spite of the fact that say state government will be helped by central assistance, it will also have access to World Bank funds. It will also have access to say other organization. All of that funds will be there. Even then, it is unable to deal with this because this is a recurring problem. Year on year, this is a kharcha that is only increasing. How do you deal with it then? Okay. So look at this. This is a photo from Bihar and look at the attack of the river. Do you realize this? It's completely eaten. And this isn't just the course of 1 year. एक साल के अंतराल में हुआ है ये. All right. So now let's look at floodplain zoning because this is how we deal with floods in India. The floodplain management concept that I'm talking about, you have to understand floodplain zoning first. Okay. So a concept central to floodplain management, it recognizes the basic fact that the floodplain of a river is essentially the area of a river. Okay. And that intrusions must recognize the river's right of way, that it's going to shift its course. It's going to go its way. So you have to adapt to the river will not adapt to you firstly. Alright. It measures, aim at demarcating zones or areas likely to be affected by floods and specifies the type of permissible developments. What is an important point here? It does not ban any developmental activity, no. UPSC will ask you this, that floodplain zoning prohibits human intervention in floodplains. No. What it says is, it specifies the type of permissible developments in these zones, and whenever floods occur, the damage can be minimized. Make a note of this, guys. This is a point from the UPSC perspective where they will ask you floodplain zoning. Does it ban all human intervention? Some. It is allowed because again, you have to realize the concept. Floodplains and humans, it's a mixed relationship. It's a love-hate relationship. Good morning, Karuna. Welcome. You have a nice day too. Do you realize? So if you know the history, you will know the current polity. If you do not know the history, ये रटना पड़ेगा फिर आपको. Which is why I bring my lessons in a way in which you don't have to ratify. You can just recall the story and everything shall follow. Alright. So again, like expected, scant attention paid. And why is this issue? I'll tell you. The floodplain zoning is an issue. Why? At the heart of it, it's the states not willing to accept change. Okay. The states are, in fact, a model law was also introduced in the 70s, I believe. I must have included this point. Huh? See, a model law was also circulated. But then the states were like, no, this infringes on our, again, states' right, federalism. Which they have a fair point. To a certain extent, yes. But then again, what you have to realize is a river does not understand federalism. A river is a trans-state entity. And so a flood is not something that can be dealt with in isolation. You need all the participation of all the states together to work together to make sure that the low-lying areas do not get flooded, that at least the high-lying areas also are suitably reinforced. All of that needs to be done by state A, B, C together. However, good morning Jaipal, how are you? Welcome, welcome. Are you able to understand, guys? If you're able to understand, quickly leave me a comment and hit the like button. It's too less. I am targeting 100, yahan to 20 bhi nahi ho raha. Okay, so go ahead. Alright, scant attention paid. Central Water Commission has been continuously impressing upon the states, obviously going ahead, let's have this participatory model, but states are still very averse to this idea. Alright. So what is flood proofing? Measures in the past consistent in raising a few villages. What happens now, guys? Look at this. So if this is a river, okay. So if this is a village here, suppose, a very basic example I am telling you. What they'll do is they'll increase the height of this. So the adjoining areas might be flooded, okay, but the village will be protected. It's at a height. That is flood proofing. There's also flood proofing that you do of your house. Okay, in the Western countries, what you do is, you have the house here, okay. So your basement will be constructed such that if floods come, it is able to store your house is safe. Flood proofing the house, okay. Flood proofing communities, that is what happens. Okay. So you find all of these examples, West Bengal, Assam, it's often done. Go ahead and have a look at this slide. So make sure that you know the difference between flood proofing. Floodplain zoning to अच्छे से याद रखो आप. Good morning Bhaskar, how are you? Deepak, same has been happening with Assam. Yes, Deepak, here's your point. Absolutely, I agree with you. Good points. See, Northeast you cannot control because again, the siltation of Brahmaputra is immense. I mean, if you look at, say, the CWC water report, okay, you look at the amount of volume of water that it carries, the volume of silt that it carries, plus you have Brahmaputra that is again open to, misappropriation or at least mismanagement by the Chinese water authorities also. In fact, one of these days we must do a session on the Chinese water projects in the upstream of Brahmaputra. You will realize a large part of our flooding problems originate also due to that. Okay. So we'll do that. It's something that I've been meaning to do for a long time. Let's do that someday. Okay. All right. So this is the question, guys. Okay, I'm expecting answers to this. I'll just write my email ID for you for those of you who are interested. Some students very regular in sending me their answers, which is most appreciated. I send them, each of them in fact, personalized feedback. There is no copy pasting. So go ahead. This is the question for today. Providing absolute protection to all flood prone areas against all magnitude of floods is neither practically possible nor economically viable. Comment. Don't write more than 250 words. Okay. Keep it short, keep it succinct, have a good introduction, have a conclusion. Firstly, most of you make that mistake. Introduction is weak, conclusion is non-existent. What you do is you write the points. Good, you must write the points. Without the points, there is no answer. But also, give an introduction. Make it like a presentable answer that you would also like to read. And in the conclusion, give me a takeaway. You know what a takeaway means? Something that I can understand from the whole answer that, okay, this is what the student was meaning to convey. All your facts, your evidences should substantiate your conclusion. Okay, so give it a shot. Most of the students are writing this and I'm quite impressed. और ये अभी solve करिए तो जल्दी से. StudyIQ MCQ. Let's do this quickly. Let's see how many of you followed this lecture to the T that it was intended. Go ahead. Flood control is a part of the state list. Dams are used to hold back water and create reservoirs. Barrages are used to control the flow of water and regulate its level. Which of the above are correct? Because again, dams and barrages has been in the news recently, especially with relation to New Delhi. The Delhi government, the Haryana government, trading blows, trading pubs at each other. So we should understand what is a dam, what is a barrage. बताइए इसका आंसर क्या होगा? Question A. Let me know. Flood control is not a part of the state list. Okay. Like I've told you, it's not mentioned anywhere. Okay. What is mentioned is embankments and drainage, which means state list के लिए ये understand किया जाता है. It is inferred as. Okay. And this is correct. Dams are used to hold back water and create reservoirs. Barrages just divert water. Dams, I'll tell you one basic difference if you have to understand visually, if you have to quickly understand the difference between a dam and a barrage. Okay. No, Monica, first one is incorrect. It's not a part, it's not mentioned in the lists. However, because of these two, embankment and drainage, it is inferred to be that states will take care of the flood control with a guidance by the Central Water Commission. Okay, so this is again a trick question you have to keep in mind. UPSC ऐसे ही पकड़ेगा आपको, ठीक है? And they are infinitely much more educated and intelligent than me. So you have to be very careful. All right. So just basic difference between dams and reservoirs. Sorry, barrages. Dams, they'll have sluices plus gates. Barrages just have gates. Barrages will just divert water. Dams have the ability to store water up until their height. Up until their height, they can store water. Whereas barrages, what they can do is only for a few feet. They're not constructed to store water, only for a few feet. That's all. They redistribute the water, a barrage. Whereas dam can hold water. Then you can use it for whatever reasons that you want to. Clear? All right, let's go ahead. Okay, so this begins on Monday, on 22nd, Friday, I believe. Okay? The P2I course. So if you understand and enjoy the way we do things here in the editorial edge, this whole deep approach to understanding, not just say upari satai se, wherein I discuss 20 articles in 30 minutes and then you don't understand anything. This is what I intend to do, a deep dive, so that after you go ahead and read this Indian Express article or Hindu article, easy peasy. Okay. So this is the whole focus of this course also. Use this code BA Live. Go ahead to studyiq.com. Therein you will find the English batch, the Hindi batch, the English batch. All of these are there. Whichever one you want to go ahead for, your language of preference. Go ahead, use this course. I think right now it will show you a course fee of around 40 something thousand, 50 or something thousand. If you apply this course, obviously you get it for like nothing else, peanuts. Okay. It's a good investment because considering that you're going to come to Delhi after your prelims for preparing for mains. You stay with us in this very building. We have a fantastic cafeteria, we have a study area, library, rooms, all taken care of. All you need to do is come here, study, have continuous access to all the faculty members, the mentors, make sure your answer writing, doubt clearance, all of that is taken care of. Okay. So any student, serious student should consider this in fact. Okay. All right. Let's look at Namda Art now, our second topic for the day. The Namda Art. So what we have seen in the news recently, this has been in the again, Indian Express plus PIB, both have taken it out. So Namda Art, the product was exported on the occasion of World Youth Skills Day. So what is Namda Art? The traditional craft of Kashmir, which involves making a rug which is primarily made of pure sheep wool. Obviously, Kashmir hai to sheep wool se banega wahan pe. Okay, it's the primary thing that you find there, the raw material. And so how is it different? Instead of using normal weaving process, what you are using is felting. What is felting technique? Now what will happen? Ideally, if I just leave it at that, that okay, instead of normal weaving, felting hota hai. Can any of you understand then? Is that complete information for you guys? If I just leave this whole class at that, ki without normal weaving, only felting is done, an art and craft of Jammu and Kashmir, and it is Central Asian in origin, GI tag mila nahi hai abhi tak. Will that be a complete information that I have given you? No. Okay. This is again not incomplete information. This is, ye to aap kahin se bhi padh lete. Please understand the larger topic now. What is felting? What exactly is felting? Namda to sabko yaad rahega, Jammu and Kashmir ka hai. What is felting? Let's get that first. Ye puchta hai UPSC. Felt, particularly made from wool, is considered to be the oldest known man-made textile. Okay. What happens, guys? एकदम बेसिक से समझो आप. ओके, हेयर, ड्राई हेयर, you can take it apart. You can, separate it. If you wet your hair, okay, you see how difficult it gets to separate it. Why does that happen? Why does that hair coagulate of sort or stick to each other? Why does that property happen? कभी सोचा है? So this is important. This is the whole concept of felting. Okay, wool and most of the mammalian fibers tend to mat together. They tend to stick together. Okay, when they are wet or they're agitated, they're heated, wet or treated, they tend to stick together. Why does that happen? Well, because they are comprised of individual fine strands and they have a scaly surface. So if you look at it under a microscope, what you find is a hair as this sort of, it has got teeth-like structure. Okay, our hair, mammalian hair or any, if you have a pet dog, if you observe the single strand of its hair under a microscope, you will find it has a teeth-like structure. So what happens? When it gets wet, this teeth-like structure locks with the other teeth-like structure, which is why it gets different to separate. Okay, this is the whole concept of felting. So when the wool is rubbed or wet, the scales flare outwards from the solid core, they lock with each other. Look at this, the scales hook, they become entangled with other fibers. The act of felting, compress them, making a dense, flat and warm fabric. This is what you have done. You have used the property, that teeth-like structure of hair, to essentially make sure that you can create a fabric out of it. That is called felting. Now you realize how the Namda wool is different. It uses the process of felting rather than traditional weaving where you have this thing and you do this and it finally becomes. Have you seen that? Whatever it is called. Okay, if someone knows what it is called, just let me know in the chat. I can't recall for the life of it what that machine's name is called. Okay, so please understand felting, guys. This is a topic I would suggest, mark important. Go ahead and read this, the 555 rule. 5 days, 5 weeks and 5 months. Every 5 days go ahead and read it. Every 5 weeks go ahead and read it. Every 5 months go ahead and read it. They'll just simply ask you felting is related to which industry, dye, something, 4 options. Not charkha riyan. But like a variant of charkha. So आप उस हिसाब से तो सही बोल रहे हो. You are getting the sense of what I'm trying to convey. That is clear. Okay. So felting, will make a note, guys. Alright. Okay. Let's move forward. The last topic of the day and what we come to is the Khas Plateau in Satara district of Maharashtra. The Khas Plateau in the news recently because a major research was carried out here. Okay, Satara district, Maharashtra likhenge aap please. First identify the location. It is close to around 100 and something kilometers from Pune, around 20 kilometers from Satara. Madhusudan, power loom, hand loom, correct. But it's got a specific name. I don't know. I forgot. Okay. So Khas Plateau dekhte. What happens is you find this brilliant flow of flowers there. Okay. It's also called like the flower abode of Maharashtra. Alright. So we'll go and have a look at what the Khas Plateau is. A plateau made of volcanic rocks, basaltic rocks, situated 25 kilometers west of Satara, falls under the Sahyadri subcluster of the Western Ghats. A UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site. Facts first. Alright. So you had research that was conducted. Okay. And what you found was that the sediments profile dating back to 8,000 years provided insights into the climatic signatures and ecosystem modifications. Can someone quickly tell me where was the Anthropocene study being held? We have done this last week. Anthropocene study कौन से lake में हो रहा है और कौन से country में हो रहा है? Let's quickly recall it first. बताइए. Because what the UPSC will do, give you lake or area and say match the following char. Which of the above are correct? 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 pair, all of the above. So quickly let's recall. Where was the Anthropocene study that is currently the site for Anthropocene study? Lake Crawford in Canada. Are you able to recall, guys? Similarly, yes, Deepak, you are correct. Deepak Mandlo is absolutely bang on with his answer. Lake Crawford in Canada. Similarly, another study held in India itself in the Khas Plateau. Okay. Also known as Khas Patthar is a biodiversity hotspot known for its seasonal flower carpet. Right now, during August and September. The plateau's name is derived from the Khasa tree, scientifically known as, the scientific name follows. Okay. So यहाँ पे भी एक स्टडी हो रहा है. नलाजना करेक्ट आशा, बहुत बढ़िया. लेक का नाम याद रखेंगे, लेक क्रॉफर्ड, that was the name of the site. Okay, Lake Crawford in Canada, the site for the Anthropocene study. Make a note of this, guys. We have done a whole class on this. Okay, so Khas Plateau. All right. So that brings us to the end of this Monday morning class. But before we end this class, we have another 10 minutes. So first things first, give me the answer to this. All right. What are the points that you would include in this, guys? Let's revisit this very quickly because this is an important topic. Flood management and flood control is a topic I would study extensively for this year's prelims. 100%. Mains in fact. Forthcoming mains, September. It's been in the news. So please understand now, two things that we have to quickly get it before I close this class. ये देख लीजिए पहले and then you can move on with your day. Okay. So right now our focus is on this. Okay. Whereas our focus needs to go on flood management. Okay. So how are you going to achieve this focus? Can someone give me 2-3 quick points? Further points that you would include in an answer supporting how India government should go ahead and work towards flood management first. What should be an integrated approach? Since I've given you the whole geography of it, the flood-prone river basins, I've given you the legislation also, the statutory provisions. I've also given you the measures that are in place. How are you going to engineering measures to reduce flood flow, reduce flood spillage, as well as the administrative thought behind it. So identify 2-3 quickly in the chat for me. Then we'll close this class. What are the points that you would include for this answer? That India government should have an outlook changing from say flood control to flood management now. What is needed is first an integrated approach. Would you realize this? That what you need is essentially the union government's hand-holding plus a collaborative approach between the states. Because even though this is a primary responsibility of the states, okay, it can't be done without union government. Okay. At the same time, you need hydrological studies. You realize you have to work towards R&D. Make sure you have the information, the forecasting, the flood forecasting should be on point, which means your weather forecasting should be on point. Okay. At the same time, work towards capacity building. I'm giving you further points. Write this, which is why I'm taking 10 minutes. Okay. I want you all to write this answer. I'm giving you the further points. 5 मिनट वो आर्टिकल पढ़ो इंडियन एक्सप्रेस का, आंसर फटाफट लिखिए आप. कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग क्या होगा यहाँ पे? Make sure that you have the adequate measures in place for local population. Okay. After the post-relief, that is also a thing, no? People have lost their lives. People have lost their livelihoods, their cattle, their house, their agricultural fields. Make sure that you're either giving them compensation ASAP or resettling them, relocating them, or if it is possible, moving them back in that particular area. Okay. You are going to use a lot of drone mapping, all this tech, drones plus satellites for increased forecasting, which means tech is going to be used essentially, a lot of it. See how many further points can come up in just 10 minutes, I'll tell you. Go ahead. Use of AI sensors, correct. Preparedness, correct. Give me more answers, guys. Come on, go ahead. Think of it. How are you going to manage floods better? Proper mitigation steps, yes, absolutely. Give it a shot. There are no galat answers. We'll figure out very quickly the answer to an important question. Give me some more answers. All right. What you are looking at is the statutory provisions to be made more inclusive. Okay. All right, focus number 6. Our embankments is currently not functioning, so it's a capital intensive process, which means more collaboration with international organizations. Okay. Number 7. और बताइए. Planting trees, fine. Yes, absolutely. How are you going to make sure that people do not live in floodplains? Incentivize moving out of floodplains. Incentivize moving out of floodplains. How are you going to reduce the impact, guys? That is the problem, no? Because floods are going to keep happening, especially with climate change happening. What the loss and damage concept is this only, no? That if I lose my livelihood, if I lose my house, if I lose my cattle, who is going to pay me? Who is going to reimburse? Now, how can the central government keep doing it year on end? Either you build the capacity, the adaptation mechanism, or the mitigation to reduce impact. Spun city, correct. Code, that is for the urban thing you're talking about, absolutely. Good, okay. More work on the loss and damage fund. This is why it is important, no? Because unless, who is going to pay for all of this? Why should the central government pay? Or why should the developing nations pay? Floods coming as a result of increased volatility in the environment is not India's doing alone. Samajh rahe ho aap? Alright, so give me the answers to this. Send me the answers to this. I've given you around 8 points. Read the article. It will not take you 10 minutes, more than 10 minutes now. You should be absolutely thorough with that point. Okay? Alright guys, we'll call it a wraps. Filtering the flood water and collecting it, absolutely important point, Monica. What you are essentially hinting it as is making sure that the redistribution of water happens. That flood water just does not drain into the ocean. Fair point raised. Okay, redistribution of water. Good point. Excess water should be redistributed. Good. Alright. Garbage waste management, obviously. Look at the amount of garbage that has been thrown out back by the rivers. What does it tell you? That anthropological intervention has now reached bad proportions, astronomical proportions. Okay? Alright. Give me the answers to this. Send me your answers by whatever time today. End of this day. Okay? Thanks for watching. I shall see you tomorrow morning, 8 AM. Another episode of Editorial Edge. And some of you have written me mails regarding increasing the time of Editorial Edge. So I think we'll take a call on this in the next 2 days. I shall keep you updated. And if you would like me to go past 1 hour, then let me know in the chat box or in the comment box. It will be of most help for me. You know, feedback helps me take decisions on this platform. Alright. Okay guys, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day. Do send in your answers. And I shall expect to see all of you tomorrow morning, 8 AM. Thanks for watching. Good day. Jai Hind.